It all started with a stupid idea. My best friend Jake said, "Let's drive to LA instead of flying. It'll be fun." And like an idiot, I agreed. There were 5 of us: Jake, his girlfriend Mia, my ex-girlfriend Sarah, our buddy Ryan, and me. We piled into Jake's old SUV, the kind that smelled like stale fries and regret. The plan was simple: drive from Phoenix to Los Angeles, crash at Ryan's cousin's place, and party for the weekend. But nothing about that trip was simple. The first weird thing happened just outside of Phoenix. We were on this empty stretch of highway, the kind where you can see heat waves rippling off the asphalt. Mia pointed out this old, broken-down diner on the side of the road. "Let's stop there," she said. "I need a bathroom break." Jake laughed and said, "That place looks like it's been closed since the 80s. But Mia insisted, so we pulled over. The diner was creepy as hell. The sign was faded, and the windows were so dirty you couldn't see inside. The door creaked open like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside it was dark and smelled like mildew. The tables were still set, like the people just got up and left. Sarah found a menu on the counter, and it was dated 1983. "This is so weird," she said, flipping through it. Then Ryan called out from the back, "Guys, you gotta see this." He was standing in front of a wall covered in Polaroid photos, hundreds of them, and every single one was of people, smiling, laughing, posing. But here's the thing, all their eyes were scratched out. We got out of there fast. No one said much after that. We just got back in the car and kept driving, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching us. We drove in silence for a while, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air before a storm. Mia was scrolling through her phone, trying to get a signal, but there was nothing. "Dead zone," she muttered. Jake kept glancing in the rearview mirror, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I didn't ask why. I didn't want to know. About an hour later, Ryan broke the silence. "Did anyone else notice that guy back at the diner?" "What guy?" Sarah asked, turning around to look at him. "There was a guy standing outside when we left," Ryan said. "He was just staring at us." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What did he look like?" Ryan hesitated. "I don't know. He was wearing this old-fashioned suit, like something from the 50s. And his face, it was blurry, like I couldn't focus on it." No one said anything for a minute. Then Jake laughed, but it sounded forced. "Dude, you're just messing with us, right?" Ryan shook his head. "I wish I was." We stopped at a gas station a few miles later. It was one of those run-down places with flickering neon lights and a cashier who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. While Jake filled up the tank, I went inside to grab some snacks. The cashier didn't say a word, just stared at me with these hollow eyes. As I was leaving, he finally spoke. "You shouldn't have stopped there." I froze. "Stopped where?" "The diner," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "They don't like visitors." I didn't tell the others what he said. I didn't want to freak them out more than they already were. But as we got back on the road, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who were they? And what did they want with us? The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the desert. That's when we saw the hitchhiker. He was standing on the side of the road, thumb out, his face hidden under a wide-brimmed hat. Jake slowed down, but Mia grabbed his arm. "Don't stop," she said. "Something's not right." Jake hesitated, then sped up. As we passed the hitchhiker, he turned to look at us. I swear, his face was completely blank. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just smooth skin. Sarah screamed. Jake slammed on the gas and we shot forward. No one said a word for the next hour. We just kept driving, the headlights cutting through the growing darkness. Then the car started making this weird noise. A low, guttural growl, like something was wrong with the engine. Jake pulled over, and we all got out to take a look. That's when we saw it. Scratched into the hood of the car, in jagged, uneven letters, were the words, "You shouldn't have left." We stood there, staring at the words scratched into the hood of the car. The desert around us was dead silent, like the whole world was holding its breath. Mia was the first to speak. "What the hell is going on?" Her voice was shaky, and I could tell she was trying not to cry. Jake ran his fingers over the scratches. "This doesn't make sense. No one was near the car. How could this happen?" Ryan was pacing back and forth, muttering to himself. "This is bad. This is really bad." Sarah hugged herself, her eyes darting around like she expected someone, or something, to jump out of the darkness. "We need to get out of here, now." Jake tried to start the car, but the engine just sputtered and died. He tried again and again, but nothing happened. "Great," he muttered. "Just great." I pulled out my phone to call for help, but there was no signal. Of course, that's when we heard it. A faint sound, like someone whispering. It was coming from the desert. We all froze, listening. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. It was like they were speaking in a language I didn't understand. "We need to leave," Ryan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Now." "And go where?" Jake snapped. "We're in the middle of nowhere." The whispers stopped suddenly, and the silence was worse. It felt heavy, oppressive, like the desert was closing in on us. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something move, a shadow, just beyond the reach of the headlights. I turned to look, but there was nothing there. "Did anyone else see that?" I asked, my voice trembling. No one answered. They were all staring at something behind me. I turned around slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. There, standing in the middle of the road, was the hitchhiker. His face was still blank, but now he was closer, much closer, and he was holding something, a Polaroid camera. Before any of us could react, he raised the camera and took a picture. The flash was blinding, and when my vision cleared, he was gone. But the camera was still there, lying on the road, like forever. We just stood there, staring at the camera lying on the road. It was an old Polaroid, the kind that spits out a photo after you take it. The kind we'd seen at the diner. Finally, Jake broke the silence. "What the hell is that doing here?" "I don't know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't think we should touch it." Ryan, of course, didn't listen. He walked over and picked it up. "It's just a camera," he said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. The camera made a whirring noise, and a photo slid out. Ryan picked it up and stared at it. His face went pale. "What is it?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. Ryan didn't answer. He just handed her the photo. It was a picture of us, all 5 of us, standing next to the car. But here's the thing. We weren't smiling. Our faces were twisted in terror, like we were screaming. And in the background, barely visible, was the hitchhiker. His blank face was turned toward us, and his hand was raised, like he was waving. "This is impossible," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "We weren't even standing like this. When was this taken?" "It wasn't," I said. "This hasn't happened yet." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. No one wanted to admit what we were all thinking. This wasn't just a camera. It was something else. Something wrong. Jake grabbed the camera from Ryan and threw it as hard as he could into the desert. It landed with a soft thud, and for a moment, everything was quiet. Then the car started. We all jumped. The engine roared to life, the headlights flickering like they were alive. Jake ran to the driver's seat and slammed the door shut. "Get in!" he yelled. We didn't need to be told twice. We piled into the car and Jake hit the gas. The tires screeched and we shot forward, leaving the camera and whatever was out there behind. But as we drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, expecting to see the hitchhiker or the blank-faced man from the diner. I didn't see anything, but I could feel it. Something was watching us. Then Mia screamed. I turned around and my blood ran cold. In the back seat, where Ryan had been sitting, there was nothing. Just an empty seat. Ryan was gone. "Ryan!" Mia screamed, frantically looking around the car like he might be hiding under the seats. "Where is he? Where did he go?" Jake slammed on the brakes, and the car skidded to a stop. We all jumped out, calling Ryan's name, but there was no answer. The desert was silent. The only sound the faint hum of the car's engine. "This is impossible," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "He was just here. He was right next to me." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. This wasn't just weird. It was wrong. People don't just vanish into thin air. Jake grabbed a flashlight from the trunk and started scanning the area. "Ryan, if this is some kind of joke, it's not funny." But it wasn't a joke. Ryan was gone. We searched for what felt like hours, but there was no sign of him. No footprints, no clues, nothing. It was like he'd never been there at all. Finally, we gave up and got back in the car. No one spoke. What was there to say? We were all thinking the same thing. Whatever was happening, it wasn't over. Jake started driving again, his hands gripping the wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. Mia was crying softly in the back seat, and Sarah kept glancing out the window like she expected Ryan to appear out of nowhere. Then the radio turned on by itself. Static filled the car, loud and grating. Jake reached over to turn it off, but before he could, a voice came through. It was faint, barely audible over the static, but I could make out the words. "You shouldn't have left." The voice was familiar. It was Ryan's. Mia screamed again, and Jake swerved, nearly driving off the road. He managed to straighten the car, but the radio kept playing. Ryan's voice repeated the same phrase over and over, growing louder each time. "You shouldn't have left. You shouldn't have left. You shouldn't have left." Jake finally managed to turn the radio off, but the words echoed in my mind. "You shouldn't have left." Left where? The diner? The gas station? The desert? I didn't know, but I had a sinking feeling we were about to find out. The silence in the car was suffocating. No one wanted to say what we were all thinking. Ryan was gone, and it was our fault. We shouldn't have stopped at that diner. We shouldn't have picked up that camera. We shouldn't have left him behind. Jake was driving faster now, his eyes glued to the road. Mia was curled up in the back seat, her face buried in her hands. Sarah kept glancing at me, like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Then the headlights flickered. At first, it was just a quick flash like a bulb about to die. But then it happened again, and again. Each time, the darkness seemed to last longer, until the car was plunged into total blackness for what felt like an eternity. "What the hell is going on?" Jake muttered, slamming his hand on the dashboard. The headlights came back on, but something was wrong. The road ahead looked different. The desert was gone, replaced by thick, towering trees that loomed over us like giants. The air felt colder, heavier, like we'd driven into another world. "Where are we?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. No one answered. We were all too busy staring at the road ahead. It was narrow now, barely wide enough for the car, and the trees pressed in on either side. The headlights barely cut through the darkness, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. Then we saw it. A figure standing in the middle of the road. It was too far away to make out details, but I could tell it wasn't human. Its shape was wrong, its limbs too long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Jake slammed on the brakes, and the car skidded to a stop just a few feet away from the figure. For a moment, no one moved. We just sat there, staring at it, waiting for it to do something. Then it turned its head. Its face was blank, just like the hitchhiker's. But this time, there was something else. A smile. A wide, grotesque smile that stretched from ear to ear. Mia screamed, and Jake threw the car into reverse. The tires screeched as we backed away, but the figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching us, its smile growing wider and wider. We didn't stop until we were back on the main road. The desert was back, the trees were gone, and the figure was nowhere to be seen. But the feeling of dread stayed with us, clinging to the air like a bad smell. "What the hell was that?" Jake asked, his voice shaking. No one had an answer. But I knew one thing for sure. We weren't going to make it to LA. We drove in silence for what felt like hours, but the clock on the dashboard said it had only been 20 minutes. Time didn't feel right anymore. It was like the desert was stretching it, twisting it, making every second feel like an eternity. Jake kept glancing in the rearview mirror, his hands gripping the wheel so tight I thought it might break. "We need to find a town or something," he said finally. "We can't just keep driving like this." "And do what?" Sarah snapped. "Ask for directions to the nearest exorcist?" No one laughed. The headlights flickered again, and for a moment I thought we were back in that dark, tree-lined road. But when the lights came back on, we were still in the desert. Only now there was something in the road ahead. It was a suitcase. An old, beat-up suitcase, lying right in the middle of the road. Jake slowed down, but he didn't stop. "We're not touching that," he said, his voice firm. But as we drove past, the suitcase popped open. Clothes spilled out, along with something else, something that made my blood run cold. It was Ryan's jacket. "Stop the car!" Mia screamed, grabbing Jake's arm. "That's Ryan's! He was wearing it when he—" Jake didn't stop. He just kept driving, his face pale and his eyes fixed on the road. "It's a trap," he said. "It has to be." I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were making a mistake. What if Ryan was out there somewhere waiting for us? What if he needed our help? Then the radio turned on again. This time, there was no static. Just Ryan's voice, clear and cold. "You left me," he said. "You left me, and now I'm here." Mia started crying, and Sarah reached over to turn off the radio. But it didn't work. The knob wouldn't budge. "You shouldn't have left," Ryan's voice continued. "But it's not too late. You can still come back. "Where are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. The radio crackled, and for a moment there was silence. Then Ryan's voice came through again, softer this time. "You know where I am?" The radio turned off, and the car was silent again. But the words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. We all knew where he was, back at the diner. No one said a word for a long time. The idea of going back to that diner was unthinkable, but so was leaving Ryan behind. Mia was crying quietly in the back seat, and Sarah kept glancing at me like she wanted me to say something. But what could I say? Finally, Jake broke the silence. "We're not going back," he said, his voice firm. "It's too dangerous." "But what if Ryan's still there?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. "What if he's hurt?" "What if it's not Ryan?" Jake shot back. "What if it's something else, something pretending to be him?" No one had an answer to that. We kept driving, but the road didn't feel right anymore. It was too straight, too empty, like it went on forever. The desert stretched out on either side, endless and unchanging. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the occasional sniffle from Mia. Then the car started slowing down. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked, looking at Jake. "I'm not doing anything," Jake said, his voice tense. "The car's losing power." He pressed down on the gas, but the car didn't speed up. If anything, it slowed down even more. The engine sputtered, and the headlights flickered. No, Jake muttered, slamming his hand on the steering wheel. "Not now." The car came to a stop, and the engine died. The headlights went out, plunging us into darkness. For a moment, no one moved. We just sat there, staring into the blackness, waiting for something to happen. Then the headlights came back on, but they weren't pointing at the road. They were pointing at the desert. And there, standing just beyond the light, was the diner. It looked exactly the same as before. The faded sign, the dirty windows, the creaky door. But there was something different this time. The Polaroid photos were gone. In their place was a single sign, handwritten in red paint. "Welcome back." We sat in the car, staring at the diner. No one wanted to get out, but we didn't have a choice. The car was dead, and the desert stretched endlessly in every direction. The diner was the only thing around for miles. "We can't go in there," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "We just can't." "What other option do we have?" Jake snapped. "We're stuck here." I didn't say anything. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The diner, the camera, the hitchhiker, Ryan's voice on the radio. It all felt connected, like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't quite put together. Finally, we got out of the car. The air was cold now, colder than it should have been in the desert. The diner loomed in front of us, its windows dark and lifeless. The sign creaked in the wind, the red paint on the welcome back sign glistening like fresh blood. Jake led the way, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The door creaked open as we approached, like it was expecting us. Inside, the diner was exactly as we'd left it, the tables still set, the menu still on the counter, the smell of mildew stronger than ever. But there was something new. The wall where the Polaroid photos had been was now covered in writing. Words scrawled in red paint, overlapping and chaotic, like someone had been trying to send a message. "What does it say?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. The words were hard to read, but I could make out a few phrases. "You shouldn't have left. He's still here. Don't look behind you." Then I saw it. At the bottom of the wall, written in smaller letters, was a single sentence. "The camera knows." Before I could say anything, the door slammed shut behind us. We all jumped, and Jake swung the flashlight around, but there was no one there. The door had closed on its own. "We need to get out of here," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "Now." But as we turned to leave, the radio behind the counter crackled to life. Static filled the air, and then a voice came through. It was Ryan's. "You're here," he said. "I knew you'd come back." The radio cut off, and the diner was silent again. But the silence didn't last long. From somewhere in the darkness, we heard a sound. A low, guttural growl, like something was moving toward us. And then the flashlight died. The darkness was absolute. I couldn't see my own hand in front of my face, let alone the others. The growling sound grew louder, closer, and I could feel the air around us grow colder, heavier, like the diner itself was alive and breathing. "Jake?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Where are you?" "I'm here," he said, his voice barely audible over the sound of our panicked breathing. "Stay close." We huddled together, our backs pressed against the wall. The growling stopped, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, from somewhere in the darkness, we heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving toward us. "Who's there?" Sarah called out, her voice shaking. No answer, just the footsteps, getting closer and closer. Then the radio crackled to life again. Ryan's voice came through, but it was different this time, distorted, almost unrecognizable. "You shouldn't have come back," he said. "Now you're trapped, just like me." The footsteps stopped, and I felt something brush against my arm. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. "What was that?" Mia whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. Before anyone could answer, the flashlight flickered back on. The beam of light landed on the wall in front of us, illuminating the red-painted words, but they had changed. The message was different now, written in jagged, uneven letters. "You're next." And then we saw it. In the corner of the diner, just beyond the reach of the flashlight, was the hitchhiker. His blank face was turned toward us, his grotesque smile wider than ever. In his hand was the Polaroid camera. He raised it slowly, pointing it at us. The flash was blinding, and when my vision cleared, he was gone. But the camera was still there, lying on the floor. We didn't wait to see what would happen next. We ran, bursting out of the diner and into the desert. The car was still there, but it wouldn't start. The engine sputtered and died, leaving us stranded. We didn't stop running, we just kept going, the desert stretching out endlessly in front of us. The diner disappeared behind us, swallowed by the darkness. But as we ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that something was following us, waiting for the right moment to strike. And then I heard it. A faint sound like someone whispering, "You shouldn't have left."